love the confidence. I love the confidence in your bingo boards because you need that. Today's a big sports day, and I've been told by sources that are our producers
too.
that sports people love giving each other dumb nicknames. So the loser of this bingo shenanigan game we're playing gets a dumb nickname from the winner.
Oh yeah, I've got one from
It's gonna be good. Let's dive into our first match here.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. What did you see the name I typed?
I just saw Mitch's nickname for me. I mean, we are, these nicknames also need to be broadcast appropriate here.
How is that not?
No, that one is.
But quick shout out to production. They did change my center square to make it more appropriate for broadcast. Thank you guys. I honestly, in my old age, I've just forgotten how to be civil, apparently. Here we go. Torb and Hazard ticked off our bingo boards, but more crucially, banned away in this first game. Heading over to Samoa first. Rad do not want to deal with the Torb whatsoever.
No, we saw Tree play a lot of the Torb against them yesterday, and Tree in our post-game interview mentioned just kind of holds left click and throws his turret down and kind of hangs out, but it is still quite an effective way to play Torbjorn at the moment. And Hazard gun from Avidity's side. So we did see Rad try and force a lot of the Hazard like into some of the ball comps yesterday. It definitely seems to be what they want to go with.
Yeah, okay. I'm fine with that. I think that, frankly, Torbjorn's presence can almost act as a hazard deterrent anyway. I think that's something that Tree talked a little bit about in that interview, Matt. He was like, yeah, it's really hard for Hazard because he just sort of ends up being out in the open and there's this, free damage coming in from the Torb and he tries to dive into backlines and there's an extra bit of, defensive architecture there. We'll see how that plays out later in the series. But we know Painkiller does not want to play anything that approximates a dive. He doesn't want to play that. So Painkiller is sitting on the Junker Queen, the Ramatra. No surprise to see that here. I doubt Avidity go with the Winston here, but it would be a ton of fun. I do think it can be effective, of course, but just wants to play around as Ramatra.
Well, NA being the Vibe region, right? Because it's tons of fun. They're definitely going to do it.
Oh yeah, vibes here.
It looks like they actually will end up playing the Winston here off the rip. So, interesting enough that there's the Winston with no Ana, right? Typically, we see the Ana in all the comps with Winston in the mix, but it would be really easy to kind of collapse on the Ana, given this point is like so close together. So they opt for a Kiri.
I also think that Winston is very good against the Sim, so Rad don't want to mess with that anyway. We don't see those sort of old comms. Zomba gets taken down first here. Chronic was ridiculous, I think, on a couple of occasions, especially that Widowmaker on Dorado yesterday.
Yeah.
Incredibly sharp, great awareness, preempted a lot of stuff that just yielded free kills. So I would be afraid of this Sojourn's presence if I'm Avidity, and Zomba is going to have to respect this pick.
I mean, Chronic was really, like, I would say, one of the only bright spots yesterday for Rad Esports, right? With the play on the Widow. At times in the series, which was pretty tough versus Team Liquid, is now this is going to be Avidity, right? How do you actually get this Winston into position? The last time we saw Pella kind of fall over instantly, I know they also lose Zomba at the start, so we'll see if they can get this Winston into position. But you see Mitch just kind of using those leaps to like get underneath the point, right? Force this Ramatra down. That's what they're trying to get.
I don't love the fact that Pella is trying to create a bit of space up on those stairs, but eventually has to fall back. Not a lot of backline pressure here, but Wibe able to put enough down on Painkiller at least to take down the tank of Avidity. Chronic has the mobility to keep Pella at arm's length for most, if not all of this round, so they are free to go to work with this rail. The variance, I suppose, is in whether or not there's enough connections here from Chronic if they lose their tank again, but here's a sound barrier from Lep. Okay, just in time, Chronic's able to benefit from it. It takes a while to radiate out to the Sombra, but that was enough. The pressure was definitely starting to mount here for the hit scan player of Rad Esports, and now it's a matter of retaking the point after taking Pella out of the game.
Avidity does flip, so when they are playing the Winston, they get down to the low portion of the point, and the Ramatra they actually don't bring down to contest it. That'll be a stick there from Zomba, but doesn't result in a kill. It's going to be, I believe, just onto Painkiller, just kind of eats it as now they bring in a Maga-based composition. So this is going to be able to just get onto the point, right, where they don't want to bring that Ramatra down, right, deal with that Winston, then you kind of give up some of the high ground. The Maga is able to just kind of just stand firm up on that high ground, make it very difficult to dislodge, and then also can get pretty quickly back to the high ground.
Better shield pressure as well than Ramatra generally can generate. Ramatra kind of ignores them a lot of the time with the punches, but Malga will shred them pretty quickly, giving Pella a much smaller window. The rescue crew for Z's there was a little bit late, and the stomp from
orbital raid
doesn't
too.
connect. Pella's actually able to juke that by jumping over it. So now King's Blade would have to have been the answer, but Nenwa actually just slaps him down. Great start to the fight here, and Pella, well aware of the pitfalls and challenges of taking on this Malga comp, circumvent them very well.
Really nice use of the primal there from Pella. That's the orbital ray gone, and they end up using King's Blade. You don't even need a beat on the other side to deal with it. He falls right away. So huge fight win there for Avidity, giving themselves a chance to kind of battle back into this, right? Huge advantage here in this next fight with the overclock and their beat. So this is definitely one they can take down to the wire.
Overclock here for Chronic. Hasn't had a big pick like we've seen in those first two fights, first fighting Zomba, then Pella, respectively. This will at least force Avidity onto the low ground around this corner. Painkiller needs to make use of this space, but right now Rad are just using it to try and take the point. Nanwai goes forward. Sound Barrier allows Avidity to get a bit more aggressive, and they do descend upon left. That's the Lucio out of the picture for Rad. And a fight that they try and start off with an overclock falls flat. It's now going to be an even game.
Well, Avidity did a great job there, Mitch. I mean, they see the overclock that comes out from Chronic, and they don't end up beating right away. They're in no real threat of losing anybody because they're playing like far back around that corner by the point. And then they end up using the sound barrier a little bit later towards the end of the overclock and pushing on up right into Rad Esports. They take out Lap. That allows them to hold on to the point here going into OT.
King tickled there a little bit by some of that long-range pressure from Pella. No pulse bomb connect there from Zomba. Wipe has to go to work now with that overclock, and yep, CZs. It's an easy pickup. Zomba also had the same idea. Both of them descending upon that Kiriko instantly. Lepto can cover the absence of a healer with a sound barrier for a time, but eventually that cardiac overdrive is going to be an issue in terms of it running out. Painkiller eventually is going to be brought down, and Avidity have had extreme control of this game since like the second fight.
Yeah, and that is a sound barrier used by Lep there towards the end, trying to keep some players up, but scuffed on the other side for Avidity with an orbital ray. The orbital ray just so difficult, regardless of kind of what you combo with it to fight around on the point. So Avidity, they battle back there, Mitch, right? And Rad Esports, they get control of the point right off the rip, and it was really like Chronic taking out Zomba right off the rip, but then after that, Avidity played really well.
I mean, yeah, again, playing this Winston comp against the Malga, I do think Beach has, more ways to work around the Malga and, abuse his maybe lack of verticality to some degree. Rad thought the switch off the Ramatra would give them a little bit more equity in that head-to-head. They might have to face a similar decision here because Painkiller is going to be Omega mobility crept by Pella.
I wonder yesterday if you're Avidity, right? Maybe you feel like you can't play the ball, but maybe you actually kind of realize like, hey, there is an ability to dive and play fast against this Rad Esports team that they are not reacting to well at the moment, right? Playing Winston, you haven't seen a ton of Winston outside of like what, Dorado, you think, right? But right in Nimbani, but here, and you're able to make the Winston work, and you're also create chaos in the back line is the Pella going, look at that. I mean, just pushes those supports so far out as Painkiller gets extremely low.
Yeah, it's really hard for Aziz, I think, to draw a bead properly on Painkiller. They have to wrap around the corner. You can see the Juno off in the distance, but there's just no help. At least the damage on towards Pella offers some reprisal here for Rad, but they've lost two. There's just no work to be done on this point right now. And I wonder, and I'd love if that's the case actually, Matt, if they've watched this, they've seen Rad so aggressively ban out these dive enablers, realizing that they can really punish them with it.
We saw from Pella's POV, right? Leaps up towards the supports. They have to like kind of rotate all the way around. But when they rotate all the way around, at that time they're playing the Juno, right? There's no line of sight onto Painkiller, and he's playing Ramatra, like doesn't have like great personal survivability. And they just end up killing basically the Ramatra on the point. He has to like rotate all the way out, trying to get in the spot where he can get that line of sight. Now they switch over and they play the Maga and Kiri, right? So the Maga with the cardiac overdrive has a little bit better personal survivability. And then also if you like dive the Kiriko, right, can actually just swift step over towards the tank for a little bit of easier healing. So some adjustments here again for Rad Esports.
I mean, even though they were able to play around this Malga in the previous round, you can see what happens as soon as Winston is forced to fight. Painkiller right now is contesting the point. The rest of the time, though, their backline are getting mulched here on the high ground. Chronic, unfortunately, had something to say about it there. Zomba has to recall away, and that's beautifully done. Good setup there for Lep, and a kunai, rather, is going to help take down that Sojourn. But Painkiller can't do too much of Avidity dive into the high ground. They kind of just have to hope they can draw the fight down to them in moments like this. And Lep is holding onto a sound barrier, and there's no need to use it here. They're going to go for it anyway. So they really are thinking about trying to get it, even though they're so staggered, Avidity.
Right, you can just kind of extend this fight for so long, right? I think Rad Esports, the idea there is maybe using that beat and then getting aggressive, right? And trying to actually get these players off of the point. But you see Ninwai just still lurking on the point. They're going to invest the Kitsune Rush into this, Mitch, as well, because they're not able to get these players off the point, at least at the moment. And they thought it was final fight territory. And, you know, for Avidity, they're going to get this into OT. So Rad Esports need to use both support ults to get the last, to try and, get them off here. But it's going to be Avidity getting another, 20+% out of that. So Avidity, I mean, that's huge, right? Gives you a big advantage in terms of building up towards that next round of support ults.
That's interesting. Unless someone is calling to Lep to beat to save someone there, that sound barrier is a little early. And in fact, it's Rad in like a 4 versus 2 or 3 as Avidity is streaming onto the point. The Kitsune Rush timing is totally fine, but the beat maybe loses out on some efficiency. That's nicely done from Wab, though. Again, control that high ground. Avidity already starting to go to work. Pella does not have to stay around for this. They have a primal rage, so they do have to stay around. Excuse me, it's a cage fight, so Pella can eventually jump away. I think it's well worth using the primal. They've already flipped the point back now, and Rad have to find a way in. Ziz is on the way back into the fight, but they've now lost Painkiller, and Chronic's at a paltry 1 HP. 1. Getting healed up, no one looking at the Sojourn. Eventually, though, Chronic is dealt with. Rad just don't seem to have that same level of ultimate economy, the efficiency that Avidity have demonstrated over this game. Throwing good money after bad. It's a straight up 2-0 in rounds, first map win for Avidity.
It's a bit surprising for me. I know with how good Rad Esports looked in the first week, although we were worried after the Team Liquid game, you thought they'd be able to bounce back, but Avidity looked really strong, playing these really fast compositions built around that Winston, giving Rad Esports a lot of trouble.
I don't want to simplify the game plan for Avidity here into just play dive as often as you can, because there'll be some nuance. Rad get to pick maps. The bans also come into play. We talked a lot about the Wrecking Ball comp not needing a lot of other heroes to enable it necessarily. For Winston, it might be a little bit of a different story. But if you ban the Ana, for example, if you're trying to shut that comp down,
they just played it without the Ana.
This control map worked really well.
Yeah, they just played it without the Ana, right? So you get rid of the Ana, it doesn't really seem to matter all that much. Also, could just be something here for Samoa, but I mean, Rad Esports just seems like, at least, Mitch, right? You're just searching for answers to kind of deal with this, this type of dive where, they're quite fortunate that they can't play the ball maybe on the other side, right? So you would see just kind of a copy of yesterday, but taking a look at some of the stats, fairly close, right? Across the board, between these two teams. But the stats, I don't think really kind of represent what we saw there in the first map. It was Avidity, they lost 1 fight on basically both rounds, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, Rad did get a good start on Samoa, right? It's off the back of these picks from Chronic, who we kind of expect, right, to see the Sojourn have a big impact. Chronic's been incredible there. But outside of that, it was a really slow decay for that team. Again, they started with Ramacha. They switched over towards the Malga. In theory, it performs well against Winston, but I think the only map on which it would have been near impossible for Winston to win out on would have been Volcano, where you just don't have access to that high ground. Because we're sitting on board with Painkiller, who they're contesting the point, in fairness, but they're not fighting the other person contesting the point, and their team's on the high ground getting dove by the Winston. They have a Sojourn team. They need to set them up, right? They need to put them in a decent spot. They're not going to play together in a death ball on the point, because that will cause them to get picked apart by that setup. So, there has to be an answer here, I think, for Rad in terms of how they want to deal with, a dive comp. And you could pick maps that maybe shut it down a bit more. Eichenwalde
is pretty good for, Winston, Diva, things along those lines. We saw Team Liquid, obviously with Infected, they're going to play ball, but we saw them play ball on this the other day. But I think we definitely need to see the bans kind of come through before we judge the map pick.
Yeah, 100%. Because normally those are package deals, right? You are picking a map with a ban strategy in mind, or at least you have, 2 options for bans, because you don't want to just have, you don't have a tank ban in mind, and then your opponents, if they ban first, they can, they take that away from you. So again, should be a loose strategy. There is, of course, a map you can just straight up ban the Winston. Hazard is, again, on the table. If that's where, Avidity want to go. Rad don't really seem to want to play the Torbjorn, so they'll have to find other ways of sort of negating, that.
But now the Torb comes in, right? So the Torb, would be available if, as long as Avidity doesn't get rid of it, right? It was the Rad ban for game 1. So, yeah, I mean, what do you get rid of here if you're Rad, right? If you get rid of like Ana, then you open up like a tank ban or a potential DPS ban on the other side. Do you get rid of something like a Winston? I mean, that seems to be a little bit of like a throwaway type of ban, at least like because you can play the Diva, you can play Ball, right? You can play Hazard. It's not like you're just kind of like locked into just playing the Winston here. So curious what Rad Esports decides to do.
I mean, you can ban a Winston. I think if you probably are more likely though, let's say you win Iconvolta for whatever reason, your opponent is probably going to pick a map that suits the Winston comp really well, right? If that's where they think their edge is, you would rather ban the Winston on the map that your opponent is handpicking in order to, facilitate for that. So I don't necessarily, and also like the dive comp here on first of Iconvolta isn't always as powerful. Sometimes there is a real late, I mean, you don't want to play it defensively, that's for sure. We have Diva and Tracer bans.
Yeah, and it's the Tracer ban that comes in first here for Rad Esports. So maybe they feel like King has a distinct advantage, right? He played a little bit of Genji there. Maybe they feel like there's not a Genji expert on the opposite side of things. And for Avidity banning the Diva, right? That just takes away one of the dive options, right? So Avidity can put themselves in whether it be a Hazard, Winston, Ball type of setup. At least here, looks like on defense. We'll get the teams up here in a second, but yeah, it's gonna be like, hey, we had footage of the Team Liquid game the other day. Let's do that. They bring in the Sim and the Torb here with the Ball to play on defense. And this is gonna be annoying for the Genji and the Hazard, right? Like this is like what they don't want to play into.
Yes. It's going to be very challenging, I think. Chronic presumably is going to walk out on the Sojourn here. Someone who, you obviously have to place your Torb turrets a bit more mindfully. Yeah, just around the corner there. So little life grippy back into the spawn. And we are playing the Torb here. So Torb Genji for Rad Esports. In this Hazard Shell, excuse me. Again, does this comp do anything to Wrecking Ball, really? I'm not certain.
Yeah, not a ton, right? You're basically all in here if you're Rad Esports on making a play for like Scuffed. If you can make a play for like the Torb, right? Like just kind of like burst him down. But Torb is so difficult to burst down, right? Like you can get the extra health. The shotgun becomes really difficult to deal with. See if right now Rad Esports doing a nice job just gaining a ton of space, right? Just haven't been able to find anything off of it.
Okay, the Venture, interesting. I'm curious how the mechanics look here for Pella. A couple of swings here that maybe they would have liked to have made a little cleaner, especially inside the hunting lodge there. Bartlett still does fall. And Scuffed is someone who's going to have a target on their back. 100%.
But the longer these fights go, Mitch, it's terrible here for Rad Esports, right? I mean, they want these fights to go as fast as possible, and that's 2 kills there. But they need to go, right? The longer these fights go, Pella can start rolling around. You start to get the bios in the mix. The Sim can start to ramp up, right? This is not the type of fight they want. Zillet does actually end up getting scuffed here, but it looks like you're going to lose just about the rest of the squad.
I mean, the damage is good, though. Pella has done very well, I think, in playing off Scuffed. Scuffed, when you're in that position as Ana, like, you know you're going to die soon. Like, you are not in a safe spot. You're forced out of the hunting lodge to play in the middle part of the map. It's good rotations. I mean, you have to do everything you can to position yourself to survive, but yeah, your lack of mobility makes these situations really difficult. Still, Rad aren't sure. I guess they want to push off the point here and take the fight, cut Zomba down, who was looking to reinforce. The minefield doesn't look like it's going to gain too much value, but this hunting lodge is very dangerous for Rad to pressure. There's a lot set up in there. Turrets, of course, the Torb turret is there additionally. Soundberry comes down as Painkiller really needed that in a pinch. Rad Esports should have the job done again, but again, Scuffed is out in the open, so they really were going to be an easy pick-off.
Those early kills really helped Rad Esports because they were actually able to push on up, use that Venture and some of the chokes and just ignore the ball, even though Pella drops a minefield from behind. And they actually get a kill into Zomba coming off the spawn. So doing a nice job just trying to burn down the Sim, right? The Sim probably the weakest of the targets on the Avidity side.
Painkiller there, actually in midair, got pile driven whilst in midair by Pella's ball. And again, like, they just dove into that heavily fortified position with the Sim turrets and the Torbjorn turret, and Their floaty jump in air allowed them to get picked off. Nenwai's done pretty well here, teaming up with Pella. Lep got caught out, and this is a position again where you can just go up here, drop down on top, pressure the back line, and wait for, you know, someone like Nenwai to jump in and join you.
What are you going to set up here? If you are Rad Esports, Painkiller trying to get into position, but you see not as easy on the hazard as, like, let's say a Winston or a Diva accessing that high ground. Takes a little bit longer and a little bit slower to develop.
Yeah, there's like two separate fights happening right now as Painkiller's trying to help King. They were getting dove by Pella. Molten Core here, kind of not really an issue for Avidity. They're too mobile, and they don't have a setup on the low ground. They're playing on top of the castle here. Chronic falls a little bit low despite them using that overload. And King's Tectonic Shot finding Scuffed means they must have gotten up in the castle, up on that high ground. I don't know what Avidity have there to shut them down right now. And Pella has overstayed a little bit. Still able to stay alive. I like that little a quick throw out of the cable to get a speed boost inside the castle.
And that is a few ultimates used there by Rad Esports, but they actually ended up using the Nano onto Pella. In that previous fight, 2 kills for Pella here, but the Nano on the Pella with a pile driver in that previous fight just landed right on top of Chronic, finished him off, and that allowed them to win it there. And now coming off the respawn here with his minefield, Pella able to find 2 kills there, so pushes Rad Esports all the way back to the spawn.
Yeah, King, I mean, the problem for Venture is that when you come out of your burrow, you will be shot up in the air, regardless of whether you charge it or not. So there's a vulnerability window for them that is pretty easily exploited. And if you're using it as an escape and get chased down, you'd like just end up being dangled in front of them for, you know, 1.5 seconds at low health.
You can also see the Diva ban come into play here a little bit, Mitch, because this is where Diva would be awesome, right? To be able to access high ground, but then also peel a little bit with the defense matrix for some of this damage coming in. Towards the back line. Painkiller finds Zumba again. They've been able to find Zumba a few times early on, but you start to see the Diva ban maybe coming into shape here.
Yeah, and this comp doesn't do anything to Wrecking Ball. Again, we saw like them trying to throw some kunai in the direction of Pella, force them back. There is high ground control now for Rad Esports, but because they're not playing like a Ash Sojourn comp, it's not nearly as powerful a position as if they had real hit scan on their team to leverage that kind of range. This could be nasty, by the way. A Molten Core here, if they're all grouped up on the high ground, it's just not necessary in the end for WUB. Avidity have this comp that can just pull up on you with no warning and burst you down. Oh, okay.
That's Kitsune Rush for both teams, but obviously Avidity getting the better of it, and now we're below a minute already here for Rad Esports. So Chronic gonna go over and try and play Sombra here. That'll definitely have an impact on the ball, right? If you can get some of those hacks off Sombra, historically one of the better heroes against Wrecking Ball, is maybe just trying to bait Pella into a hack.
I mean, Lep just got picked up
but
there.
He's got sound barrier.
Shot.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's on the high ground trying to harass. That's so dangerous to do that. Nenwai got a little bit too close, though, to the Eye of the Storm there for Rad. But they've got the Kiriko still to rely on. Both teams, of course, still with the lion's share of their healing in play. Now Avidity a little bit unsure whether they fight for the high ground or they sit up on the cart. They were definitely of 2 minds there. Zomba ends up being traded out for Lep. So no beat in this fight for Rad.
I think if you're Avidity, you back up, right? No reason to kind of have a little bit of a junk fight continuing. You wait for some of these players to get off respawn. That's going to be a big sim wall here. Going to split up a lot of the damage.
Yeah, King gets into the backline and is able to pop that tech shock down with a sound barrier. Means that Scuff can hit a couple more kunais. Nicely done by Nenwai. Sees an opportunity to take the otherwise very sticky Venture out of the game. And now Nenwai probably just goes to see what's happening up on the high ground. WUB is going to be there. Molten Core thrown down, but they do need to touch this card. Left for Zomba again is the trade. Downpour is that nobody in particular, as the entirety of Avidity were behind Painkiller, not in front of him. So interesting positioning for that ultimate here. And this is quite a blowout as far as Eichenwalder is concerned. It's a stop in front of the gates.
Yeah, I mean, Rad Esports, their offense was pretty good, right? On first point, they were able to get the objective rather quickly. But after we got past there, it was all Avidity, right? Being able to kind of control that high ground. Rad Esports trying to play the hazard into it, never was really able to get up there and win a clean fight and get the payload kind of moving through that castle area. It was pretty much Avidity in control the entire time, and really difficult for Rad Esports to even get like their supports through the choke, right? A few players can use some mobility to cross the gap, but I know you got the Lucio Kiri, they were pretty easy targets.
It's not just Torbjorn, by the way, that benefited from a number of like these random sort of stealth buffs. Ball got them too. Ball really God, if I'm thinking back, especially to the start of 5v5, like, it was not particularly popular pick at all. Now, of course, like, being slanted in a more supportive direction because you can impart that sort of adaptive barrier shield to people within a radius of you, gave you another access to play on the ball. And now, of course, it's just very, very powerful. It was powerful in the Sojourn comps. Now here, it's just unkillable to the, you know, the solid comp of the day. Like either, you know, Lucio Kiriko, Lucio Juno, like they just don't do anything to them. Wrecking Ball now has really had this durability creep, I think, as a result of the popular backline choices. And Rad don't know how to deal with this either, frankly.
And just like how we talked about where, you know, Torb and Sim, you start to get like these balance patches where they get a little bit of an adjustment, they get a little bit of adjustment, all of a sudden like it starts to creep up. Ball feels like in the same way, right? They kind of like change the way the adaptive shield works, and that doesn't really make him like that impactful. There's some more changes that kind of come through, and then all of a sudden you give it a fair shot in scrims, and you're like, oh man, this hero is disgusting, and that is going to be scuffing on Z's right off the rip. So that is the hero you do not want to lose on the side of Rad Esports.
No, but again, when you're playing in a group like this Ramattra combat, you don't have anywhere to swift step to. Everybody's around you. You don't have anyone playing as like a loose end or in the periphery of the fight to give you like an escape route.
Doesn't it feel like though, like the ball comps specifically, like feast on comps like this, right? That are like Ramattra want to stick close. You know what I mean? Like you get these big pile drivers. Like, yeah, I mean, generally, like these are the comps that ball actually performs like historically pretty well against.
Well, Ziz, she came back to the fight, and she has now made a very swift exit once more. Yeah, I mean, because obviously you get more shielding, more players knocked up. It's just your impact is amplified the closer together your opponents want to play. That's why teams are playing the just the counter dive with Winston against this setup.
If you wanted to play kind of like this style of play, right, with like a little bit of a more static-based comp, like, I mean, just play even just play Cassidy with it, like use the Vortex, the Mag Grenade, like try and just like delete the ball, right? But there's nothing to really stop or CC him as they actually knock Painkiller to the low ground. Actually, Painkiller ends up across up on the high ground there.
Okay, well, not the worst place to be set up, really. Z's able to keep Chronic up. They are obviously trying to stand at a more mid-range position, and Pella's a little low to full commit onto any targets here. So the swift step forward from Scuff. They might Kitsune rush back in the direction of the cart here, but it's probably not enough Avidity presence here right now. Chronic going down is massive, though. It's just King. So you maybe regroup and try and press some sort of advantage, but I like this from Rad. Get up on that cart. Tell the ball that he has to fight out into some where everyone can see him.
Yeah, they're going to have players coming off the spawn, though. They're going to be, like, really split here, as that's going to be King using the Molten Core there, just trying to maybe defend the Ramattra a little bit from some incoming players. As yeah, you see there's going to be fights from every which angle, and this is not exactly where Rad Esports wanted to play, Mitch. I mean, they get booped to the low ground by Pella. Pella just like rolling up to the high ground constantly. First time it's Painkiller, next time it's Chronic, just knocking them down from the top of the castle.
Yeah, they kind of get pushed into a spawn camp situation that they don't.
That right there, right? There's no real protection for these, right? You know, she gets rolled over by the ball, and then what? The Sojourn comes to put a few shots. The ball just rolls right back. Not scared of that whatsoever.
No, and there's no way to knock the ball off course, to slow them down, to stun them, or anything like that. Like no Sombra, no Cassidy, no Brig here. No, honestly, none of that. You are really just hoping you can ignore them. Good boop. The boop is obviously something you can work with. Knocking the ball off course, that was obviously an example of shutting down that power drive. Here's an overclock for Chronic, and that is a great sim wall. The card is getting away from Rad Esports right now, and they're in the worst possible place. They're on the high ground, sure, but they can't really shoot through that wall. Wub drops down now and punishes people that want to play up close. So you're damned if you do, and if you don't, if you're Rad Esports. Annihilation here, though. Wub gets devoured by the Maelstrom. And that Ramattra ultimate, busted as it is, might be enough here to give Rad an edge in this fight. But King, barely alive, hanging on. Avidity just die on card and say, we'll be back for more.
That time they finally dealt with Pella, right? And you see the Annihilation just so strong. Even
they use rolls, mate.
Yeah, even Wub using some just the Molten Core and then being able to stay alive, just trying to almost shotgun the Ramattra down. The Painkiller with that Ramattra ult plus sound barrier. Very difficult to deal with. Pella does have this minefield. Who's gonna drop it? Oh, gets a wide spread there, like connects on some of the high ground and down by the payload.
That's it. It's time for a base mirror. Painkiller has switched over to the Wrecking Ball. Just as Pella tries to set up a gainful minefield on the high ground that is avoided for the most part. I want to see the Painkiller attackers here. This is the kind of hero that you don't play casually normally, folks. You either are a no-life ball player or you are not good at ball. And I'll let you decide which painkiller is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a hero that is like, it's so weird. Like, it's really difficult to play. Like, it's also kind of difficult to understand like the little tech that goes along with ball as well, right? There's so many little things that you can do with the hero that is just unlike any other, and that's going to be a Kitsune Rush just to get them over the line. But that's Avidity, man, with another map win. Rad Esports looked great in the first series we saw them play in NA. I think they could be getting shut out in all the other ones, though. Right now, I mean, Avidity playing this ball to perfection and making it work on Eigenbolt.
I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be picture perfect, right? We talked a little bit about like, you know, the start of the game, Pella trying to set up these like big rolls into like this enclosed spaces, even like miss some of those, which is very easy to do on ball. It's a very technical hero, but there's nothing like we talked about really for Rad that helps them like shut the ball down. And what they're trying to do is hope that their game plan can be executed quicker and more effective than whatever the ball is trying to do. But ultimately, like Eichenwald is a big map. The fights break down all the time. Even if you have a very regimented composition, right? You will invariably drift apart in some of these more hectic fights where you start making your own decisions about how ultimates are used. A lot of the time, like, you know, in fight calling, it's just like, you know, kill this hero, now kill this hero. There's no talk about like where you're set up or any of that stuff. So, and you don't have the time to go, oh, watch out for the ball, he's rolling into our backline in the middle of these fights. Like sometimes, like, you know, sometimes we saw King like in a pretty good position and he's like spawn camping and all of a sudden Pella's just behind him, shoots him down a half, and then he dies to a random poke like a kunai across the map.
Yeah.
So much variance in like a Kiriko Wrecking Ball world, even more so with Sojin, honestly, when she can just kill you when you get popped up. But like, it is really hard to like develop a cohesive strategy against the Wrecking Ball comp. That's why in South Korea, they're just trying to, I just can't believe you put that nickname and just killed that. So messed up. Yeah, they just match it instead of trying to counter it.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to match the disruption, right? Because you see, like, look, with the Wrecking Ball comp, right, you're not going to have as, like, much healing per se, right? You're not, like, playing these, like, long, prolonged fights, right, where you're going to need, like, tons of healing resources. It's a little bit higher on damage, but you just don't really see a ton of deaths from these comps, right? You know, as we've seen over the last few, you know, weeks, whether it be, you know, in other regions or now here, when these comps are run really well, you know, the Wrecking Ball dies like once or twice a map. I mean, it's kind of rare.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, objectively, much like even like Tracer players, we know that they can be quite self-sufficient, but their vulnerabilities that can be burst down by random damage like kunais and stuff like that. That's obviously not an option for Wrecking Ball. Their entire kit, and mind you, nothing is built into Wrecking Ball's kit that lets them like stave off crowd control outside of the tank passive. So that is supposed to be where you get the ball, but you need not only the ability to stop him in his tracks, but then you need to get through 500 HP plus like 600 shield from adapting barrier. It's like
it's like he just rolls up and has primal rage, like basically.
Like you need tons of damage. You need you know, great survivability against the ball. You need a lot of CC. You need generational wealth. You need a great credit score to be able to beat that comp. It's a lot to ask.
Yeah, it seems like the best way obviously is to match it, like historically, right? Like with these like crazy comps, like historically the best way to do it is to go about matching it. At least from what we've seen, you know, we saw Painkiller play the ball there for, you know, maybe like what, 2 minutes. It doesn't really seem like they want to play it. Maybe they feel like eventually they'll be forced to just like, you know, beaten to submission to play the ball, right?
Practicing now, I guess. What better place to do it?
But this is not a hero that you just like practice, you know, put a few hours in on the weekday and you're all of a sudden you can play it, right? It takes a while to master this hero. It's just a really odd one.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the kind of hero that has had these specialists over the years, but rarely is it something that's just like part of your repertoire necessarily. I guess like, was it Junbin plays a lot of ball as well? I mean, that was someone we like commented on last year who just like happened to play a bunch of tanks plus the ball. Kellen,
among our first original ball expert here in Overwatch Esports.
Oh, I mean, that's Avril Erasia. That's crazy, honestly. Avril Erasia, unreal, man.
Avril is not a Wrecking Ball expert. You know, that's.
I mean, I don't know. I thought that's how he managed to get you guys to let him play ball on your talent takedown team. I thought that was the pitch.
That was an inside job from somebody on the other team.
Okay.
He's a secret agent.
All right, there's some tampering.
Yeah.
Havana's coming up next.
Do they ban ball? We didn't see them ban ball yesterday, right? Get rid of it, at least for a map.
I mean, are we at the point now where we just assume you can play ball everywhere?
Kinda.
After what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much play it just about everywhere, it feels like, at this point, right? But at least give yourself a chance. Like, if you can't play against the ball, like, get rid of it for a map. Like, let's just kind of like, hey, we'll figure out later.
Yeah. So I don't know what the consensus is on maps that you can just sort of force Wrecking Ball. I think we had a couple yesterday that we thought it was probably not going to be any good, and yet it was actually Eichenwalde that we had our doubts about whether it would be played there, but we saw that it was completely reasonable. I would suggest that it's the one thing that is absolutely ruining you right now. If you are,
other than that, Rad looks fine. Yeah, I mean, other than playing against these like and look, if you ban the ball and you lose to like a Winston dive, like, well, you know, come back again next weekend, right? But to just like lose against the ball constantly but never ban the ball once, it feels like a little bit of a throw.
I also think that, like, on a map like Havana, you probably can get a lot more mileage out of playing Malga into Winston.
There it is.
Okay. So this is totally fine. Also, I like this idea as well from Avidity. They know, obviously, Rad have a pretty sick.
Oh, Chronic was sick. So, yeah.
Don't let them play the Widow and ban the ball. I think you just need to keep them honest here. I think that, like your Malga against Winston, if your Painkiller's trying to play that matchup, is probably a little more reasonable here than it is on Havana because of the straightaways that this map has, and you can tell your team to just, I don't know, stack on the tank player if they need to. Avidity don't want a Malga of their own here. They will have the Torb and the Symmetra comp though.
I was gonna say you could play like Sigma on defense, right? We still see teams do that here, but look, I mean, this Torb Sim seems to be pretty strong right now. So you take this in combination, right, with Malga. Maybe you play really close here, I imagine. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, and I think one of the players in our interviews, not sure if it was NA or EMEA, but they mentioned how the Torb is just really annoying for like Hazard to deal with. Where Rad Esports, it's like, okay, unless you believe otherwise, right? You'd be playing a little bit of a disadvantage, right? With that Hazard, and they'll actually match a Malga here. So we'll see if Rad Esports looks a little bit better here now that the ball's gone.
I mean, their comp is much better, like in terms of the DPS. This is genuinely like exactly
historically, yes,
comp that can answer this setup. Minway is okay. You Suzu yourself to take that fight. I mean, wow, Avidity really relying on the Kiriko to stop the DPS flanking around them. Unfortunately, that hasn't really eventuated. Rad have been able to get this far now in position. Chronic is dead though. I think okay,
dude, if you don't kill the Sim, it's like a really sturdy comp, right? Like with the Torb and the Malga and the Cardiac Overdrive and the healing from the Juno and like the Suzu. But I mean, King gets a really nice off angle. I mean, as good as you can probably ask for, right? Gets behind them on the street, has like that straightaway, and still not able to find anything.
This Rad Esports is hard in this. Again, they're going to go with this Farah comp. King has to get through Minway, who's been designated as the anti-flanker for Avidity, presumably because they have the mobility to return to the body of their team. It actually means that you get something off Swift Step, as opposed to if Minway was playing in the clump, the death ball, wouldn't be able to escape at all. Eventually, this comp should be able to fall down, but it costs a nano boost on the Malga in order for Painkiller to beat Pella. And Wab and Scuffed are going to hang around. So the Ana here, Fraziz, getting them that edge they're looking for. King eventually comes in to fight, but only once all of the real threats are dead. Okay, I see you.
I mean, you have to use a nano to get out of the spawn. Hey, that's fairly good, I think, if you're Avidity, right? Being able to force out one of those support ultimates, and they burn a bit of clock there. I think, though, like you mentioned, how do you deal with this far, right? You're obviously not playing any hit scan. We'll see if maybe it is, Ninwai was kind of battling King as he was up in the sky and Wub firing some shots, so maybe they still feel even confident against this far, regardless.
All right, here's that TP that allows Pella to cross out a spawn and out of the choke that was being bombarded by King, who now is facing a little bit of pressure, but they should be able to set up on the balcony. Yep, easily enough. And then right down, Zomba also picked up. There was a bardic grenade involved there, I believe, from Z's.
Yeah.
And this is the Rad comp that should work, especially now they're out in the open. But I wonder, do things change when we head into the brewery phase of the map? And then even that final stretch also might necessitate something different.
That was so aggressive from Ninma, using the Kitsune rush like Suzu from the high ground. I think they actually thought they were going to like fly around the corner originally and kill King. They almost did, but King able to live, kind of gets a better angle there and able to put down a ton of damage. Ooh, some nice shots there, some directs into Wub. Nice peel there from Ninma, trying to boop him back. Oh, almost able to take out Wub there, but that's going to be first checkpoint for Rad. And now as we move in towards this second part of the map, yeah, this is probably where it's a little bit harder to play that far.
Okay. Wub here, of course, is playing from a stranger spot towards the backline more than anything. Good damage off some of these shots, but now caught inside. Yeah. Caught inside the cage fight. Moncore is actually able to destroy the cage fight, which is pretty helpful. Get some damage onto the walls. The Rad do not want to get cooked inside their own cage fight. They've been thrown into the crater of Krakatoa. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, the Sim and the Torb inside of the cage fight just didn't account for that.
Which god is Avidity trying to appease by sacrificing him?
Man. What do you nano the, is it like a nano Far? Do you nano Malka here? Like what is the target for Z's? I'm curious what she decides to do with this ultimate.
Look, I think you probably hold over for the durability. Chronic was maybe an acceptable candidate, but it's got to be the Malga, I think, in almost every case. What a huge turnaround that fight was. Radar struggling to get in here. Chronic pops ultimate, gets blown up basically instantly. And I think we're forgetting, just like with this overload, this Torb feels a lot more accurate than normal. Those rivets obviously come out with higher velocity.
It feels like we're in some bizarro universe where it's like, you know what, I'm going to move off of Sojourn to the better pick. The Torbjorn here is Chronic, Torb Pharah. So still I want to play this Pharah, and I think it's like you can chunk down the Sim pretty quickly, right? Sim very weak in terms of like overall HP pool. But if you're not able to do so, it's not going to get a ton of value.
Okay, Zomba is down 5. Oh, Scuff is scary. Yep. The old torpedoes to secure that kill on Lep, and still able to keep Pella topped up now as well. A little double jump over the Malga. I think Scuffed is, yeah, definitely bitten off more than they could chew there. Pella, though, still pretty dangerous. What are we doing here? Like, what are we actually doing here?
You can see that coming from a mile away. He was off the top rope. You know, that's like in wrestling, you ever see when they go to the top rope and they jump off and the guy rolls off the table and you just send your body through the table. Yeah.
And then they go to the table. Yeah.
That was like, you know, you got to the top rope and there's nobody on the table and you just jump through the table anyway. I mean, that was, you could see Pella dying from a mile away. They actually use a sim wall here. That's a nano onto the Pharah as this fight just kind of still continuing.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, nano for King in the end here, fair enough. Pella is looking just to try and make this go a little bit longer, but gets barraged at the backside, and I think now Rad still have a lot of this phase of the map to push through. There's been a lot of stall on this team, so they got one more chance to push up. They've got a cage fight here, which in theory should be able to catch Avidity out. One has a chance to do the funniest thing ever, though, if they walk into that.
It's a Molten Core plus. You have a Orbital Ray, right? So you're definitely in this fight, even if Painkiller uses the cage fight. I think what you're looking at for Rad Esports is, can you actually get this sound barrier, right? Can this sound barrier be really effective?
Okay, they've got a touch here. Free heat oven at 275 and bake, folks. Wub throws that Molten Core
Painkiller is stuck inside.
And again, once again, Painkiller ends up putting themselves in their own oven, bro.
How brutal is it though, of like, you know what, we have one of our ultimates, but because they have a Molten Core, it kinda like, you're just trapped inside of their ultimate at that point, right? You're like, it's a weird scenario to be in if you're the Maga, as that is the payload getting stopped right before the second checkpoint.
That whole last part of the round, the whole fight inside the brewery phase was extremely chaotic. Although I will say, you know, Avidity did a great job, I think, of buying that time there by just sort of staggering, dying one by one on the cart. Nenwai tries to make a play, and I see the idea. If Pella gets that sound barrier,
It's kind of huge if he does.
Kill Painkiller. You probably can win the fight. I don't know if it's like the most amazing return on investment in the grand scheme of things, but I think Avidity at that point are just allowing the game to become chaotic because Rad, despite their content, they had like a Sojourn, they had a Farah. They still aren't able to get through this Torb and Symmetra setup. I wonder if they've thought about combining these two teams. You know what I mean? Take the best players. And you can also just like combine the names as well. It might be an option for, like, if, one of these teams were to get relegated.
I see where you're going with that. I feel like we've been down that road at one point or another.
My memory is short, in fairness.
Yeah, for sure. I do understand, though, why Nenwai ends up using that beat. It looks ridiculous, but if he keeps Pella alive, Pella was actually doing some work there. And I actually think on the other side, you may have actually ended up even winning the fight out of that, but just so risky, especially with how good beat is this is going to be Chronic just dying instantly.
I think this
nice TP work, yeah.
This is quite effective. It's very, very, it means it's hard to pin Avidity down here. It means they can go from like being in the middle of a brawl to sort of moving back. It's important for Zomba, who obviously doesn't have the durability that the Malga might have. Look at the follow-up here. Oh, the Malga, stop. What are we doing? It's crazy. Zomba eventually has to fall here. You would think.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, cart's on the way now, folks.
Well, we saw SSG, the London Spitfire squad historically, right, do really nice things with like Rhine with Sim, right, in the past, because the Sim can add like tons of mobility to characters that don't.
They played it on Watchpoint Gibraltar and won famously.
But that time, though, right, it's really just Zombie using the TP for themselves, right, just creating different off angles. You think the Sim is one spot, not in the other, like right here, right? TP just kind of like as a fake, as a little bit of a bait. You don't know if the Sim's coming on through it. They lose Nenwai though here, so you lose a lot of your speed for the rest of the team. They're pretty split here too, Mitch.
They are. I mean, but that's how Avidity liked it on the defense side. It's a bit of a different situation here, though. You've still got to respect the Malga, who can nuke you pretty quickly. Painkiller drops down. Cardiac Overdrive for both Malgas, I think, was used there. So Avidity are going to have an opportunity to regroup, with the exception of Wab, who doesn't get out alive. Painkiller heads for the heals, and it actually bait out this orbital ray. This is really nice from Rad. Nenwai back with a vengeance, of course. And with that little orbital ray boost, is able to find the Farah. I don't think that's enough to be going on with, though, despite that.
No, I don't think so as well, right? I think you're going to have to back up. You're going to end up losing this fight. So Rad Esports doing a good job here on their first point defense. Close to spawn, didn't exactly work out that well, but now on this first corner, starting to put together some fight wins where the FAR are doing some serious poke damage now, being able to just trying to chunk these players down on their way in, or even just stop pushes entirely, just having Avidity wait until they get healed up. And that'll actually have, while bringing out the Sojourn, so going to move completely away from the Torb, put a little bit more pressure on that FAR.
Yeah, again, especially up in this corner, FAR is really annoying to deal with. Orbital Ray here gets drawn out. Cage fight to keep everyone away from it. Let's see. Is that Cardiac Overdrive now? Cage fight for whom? It's Chronic. Why are we doing this to Torbs? Still, Payload able to survive that. Backs up here for some healing, and they should be good to go. This is an excellent mid-fight disengage that can be hard to put together, but Scuffed can't quite draw a bead on the Malga for long enough. Rad realize they've got to chase down and at least win that frontline battle, but now with no Cardiac Overdrive, Painkiller is a pincushion.
Yeah, you lose him and Lep quite late, so Lep comes off spawn here. Painkiller's going to come up now. I don't think can you actually get a contest here, though? I don't think, you have King actually come on out, so they're actually going to use it. They're going to use the beat for 4, so Painkiller's not going to get the effects of it, but Nenwai's got a beat on the other side.
Yeah, counter beat came out there for Nenwai. Painkiller will be back in the fight, but it's likely it might be on the later side. Lep gets caught inside the cage fight, a friendly one, but there was a disruptor shot on the ground that just accounted for the rest of their health. Now, Painkiller, definitely going to be an issue. Was able to be picked off as Z's was trying to top them up from above. So, 3 minutes and 8 seconds for this last phase of the map. Wholesale changes for Rad's composition. We go to Sombra and Venture.
Pretty decent amount of time here for Avidity. It's actually, they'll go with Diva here. So they're going to play, they want to play fast now, right? This is something we haven't really seen from Rad Esports over the last day or so. They want to play quite aggressive. We've seen them play with that Venture before, but now they're going to bring a Diva into the mix, trying to just push up into this Malga-based comp.
Okay, Orbital Ray's going to come down here, though, for Scuff. Can Avidity make use of it? Yep, Rad end up just feeding themselves into the wood chipper, Matt. I like the idea with this comp. It wants to run you down, but there's far too much healing after the fact. Rad Esports don't have, like, the highest damage, the DPS setup, right? They got a Sombra. They got a Diva.
Yes, and when you kind of move in, if you're Rad Esports, right? The Malga pops cardiac overdrive, helps keep that sim alive, right? That damage starts to ramp. The sim doesn't really care for the defense matrix at all, right? So pretty decent comp here. King gets really low. It actually gets the burrow into the ground just to be able to live.
Okay, here is that wall. Scafty is sat on the car comfortably. The wipe, of course, the switch over towards the Cassidy is a big problem for the Sombra, and honestly, it doesn't hurt you too much against the Diva. Defense Matrix is annoying, but you can do this kind of stuff. Play aggressively, especially if you got a Lucio alongside you. Avidity, again, split quite extensively here. And they're now going to run into the Venture. Hit with the hindrance grenade, though. King is going to have to get out. This will allow the cart to move up now as Pella is daring for Diva to come and fight him. That's Painkiller's issue right now. They don't have a way to really shut down this Malga in the 1-to-1, and this gets worse now with the addition of the cage fight. I do like, though, that Kitsune Rush. It's an increase in haste, so the healing from the Kiriko is better, but it's still not going to be enough, and this will be Rad crumbling. Rad Esports falling in a decisive sweep to Avidity.
I was completely wrong in this one. Avidity just dominates Rad Esports, where we were all so excited. I mean, it was like one of the talks coming into this, like, hey, like, don't sleep on Rad Esports. Like, looks like they could be a force. Maybe they can crack into that top 4 in NA in 2 matches just like that, right? You lose Team Liquid 3-0, you lose here to Avidity 3-0. Hey, you gotta start worrying about relegation now. I mean, Avidity with a tremendous win today.
Yeah, I did not see this one play out that.
No.
Honestly, like I feel, yeah, I'm positively surprised. Obviously, I do love that the Avidity stepped it up in such a way because they had a rough start to their season, right? So we weren't quite sure where in the middle of the pack they will find themselves, if not towards the bottom. But with the performance today, making themselves known, like they were a scary dive team to go up against.
I think it makes them a pretty clear-cut number 5 in OWCS Stage 1 as well. I mean, I guess it hinges a little bit on what Shikigami produces for us. They have a date in next week on the Sunday, Avidity and Shikigami. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But straight out of the gates, Avidity were determined to play comps that were uncomfortable, I think, for Rad. Playing Winston out of the gates, like there was like a switch off the Ramatra to Malga, and I think Pella just avoided Painkiller for most of the game, and then this Wrecking Ball and Arkenbolder. This is a momentum killer for me. I think if you're Rad, like at that point, you get onto that 3rd map and you're done. Your brain is fried. Playing against Wrecking Ball just requires
2 days straight.
Differently.
2 days straight here against the ball.
I know.
I mean, he
even tried to go for it himself, right? Painkiller went with the, you can't beat them, beat them.
A brief moment, yeah. I mean, they tried it, but even then, going over to these like Malga-based compositions when they got the ball out, it was still Avidity, man, who was able to kind of take them out, where they just played really strong today. I think Rad's got a lot to work on and think about going into next week, and it felt like they were kind of cruising, that they were going to be, a force here in North America, potentially even kind of, squeaking in, making it interesting in that top 4-5. But
we did judge them on just one singular game from week 1, though, and that was against Shikigami, which, let's be real, are not doing extremely hot themselves. So perhaps we overreacted.
I mean,
but there was also talk before that.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Roll Shikigami. So. Yeah, I think at least in the hazard meta, like, they were fine, but there are a number of teams, especially maybe with less resources on the coaching department, that like are going to take a little bit longer. I think.
Look, even
have natural fits for this comp.
Even with the resources, nobody preps for a Sim Torb ball setup, right?
I mean, now they have to.
I do now,
after this week, you have to.
but historically, we've never even got close to those heroes used in unison together. I mean, just really bizarre.
It is.
Yeah, bizarre, but this is what a time to be alive. What a time to have eyes. Pela, obviously one of those ball players who has been gracing us with his wrecking ball expertise. Honestly, unkillable. So frustrating.
Yes, and I also think for Pela in this series, played some Winston, played some Malga, right? A few different tanks here for Avidity that they were able to make work. So Pella just kind of flexing the hero pool in terms of tanks throughout this one, but the ball, like how Mitch said on Eichenwald, the map number 2, it was pretty devastating. I think just kind of sucked any type of momentum or confidence out of Rad Esports.
Yeah, and there's obviously like on this Rad Esports roster, you have another option at tank as well. If you are in a meta game that maybe requires, like, I don't know, something a little bit like more Ramatra based or brawly stuff, then Zeb might be an option. This team also has 2 tank players and a 3rd DPS, so there's plenty to see, I think, from this Avidity team, and I'm really impressed. This is the kind of team that is probably going to stay around in OWCS, right, with performances like this now going up 2-1. So they'd be very happy with that. I think that's your main objective, is to stay in this level, at this level, and continue to improve, because we've seen it from so many teams time after time. This is how you grow in Overwatch.
Absolutely. Now we do have Pela actually standing by for a voice-only interview, so let's check in with him and see if he can hear us. Pela, are you with us?
Hello? Yeah, I am. I'm here.
Hi, great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us after this convincing victory. My guy, that was such a dominant performance. Are you at all surprised at that? Did you expect a closer match, perhaps?
To be honest, after SSG lost the other day, we were feeling like pretty confident. Even though it was 3-0, we knew we had what it took to come into this match and win, so we were pretty confident.
Now, you guys obviously have played a ton of like Winston, ton of ball in this game. They're obviously comps that, you know, Rad have some trouble dealing with. But is this the way you kind of prefer to play this new meta we've seen that has like ball, Torb? Does that suit you? Are you guys happy to be playing this right now?
I'm not sure. I think Wub's having a lot of fun on Torbjorn, I'll say that much. But I don't think it's suited for a lot of my team, but I'm obviously very comfortable in the Wrecking Ball, so it's like a very good direction for me personally.
That's a one DPS player now that we know has fun playing the Torb. Everybody else has been against it.
Yeah.
I gotta ask about Samoa. You guys ended up playing the Winston there, which we haven't really seen a ton of Winston on Samoa, at least here through stage 1. Walk us through a little bit of why you guys decided to do that.
Our initial thoughts were, going into it, we were either gonna play, I've just historically played Monkey on that map whenever I was playing, and our other tank had thrown up this morning. So all of a sudden, I'm finding out I'm playing Samoa, and I'm like, okay, Monkey's the best thing, or like the thing I know how to play on Samoa. So I just thought, why not?
All right, why not? Well, if it works, it works. It was a dominant showing. Hope your teammate is feeling better very soon. But it was an absolute pleasure to see you in action throughout all 3 maps. Pela, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck in your next match.
Thank you so much.